Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with Lord of the Nazgûl, Nazgûl Kindred deck. This comes from Justin, who named it Nazgûl Wraiths, which I do like. This is kind of like a Wrath Kindred deck with a main theme of kind of, just using either the Nazgûl, like a Lord of the Rings theme, using the Nazgûl or the Lord of the Nazgûl to just wraith out your opponents. This deck comes to us from a longtime support of the channel, Justin, who says, what needs improvement? Everything. I don't play Commander. So, Justin and I have had a lot of conversations about Commander, and I've slowly pulled him in against his will, so the bar for him is pretty low. However, I think the deck already is in a pretty good space. We've got some adjustments to make, but overall, I'm pretty excited to work on it. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So who is Lord of the Nazgûl, and why are they our Wraith Kindred deck commander? Lord of the Nazgûl is a 5-mana Wraith Noble in blue and black, flying. Wraiths you control have protection from Ring Bearers, and then whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 3/3 black Wraith creature token with Menace. Then if you have 9 or more Wraiths you control have base power 9 and toughness 9/9. So that'll just be 9/9s until the end of turn. Now, this is a pretty strong ability already. We have a large collection of legendary creatures that have kind of this type of text, the latter half, where it's like whenever you magecraft or otherwise cast an instant or sorcery, create a token. Lord of the Nazgûl is very notable as he creates 3/3s. Those are pretty good, and then gives you a secondary bonus when you have 9 or more of them. Obviously, if you've read or watched Lord of the Rings, there are 9 ring wraiths, and so this is the whole idea. Once they're together, they get incredibly powerful. Now, I think there is a build of this deck that just focuses on this magecraft ability and plays kind of control game, but that's not the version we're playing. We're also playing it with the ring wraiths, which or the Nazgûl as they are called here. Notably, as I know, Justin does not have 9 separate art copies of the Nazgûl, and therefore he will be going to Magic Jail very quickly. However, for the purpose of this deck, that doesn't really matter. The alternative or the secondary win condition of the deck is just to focus on the Nazgûl themselves. And with that, let's just get right into the deck. I think there are a few things I want to start off with. Obviously, we are at 34 lands, 35 including MDFC, and I think we could improve it. We're very, very low on on mana rocks, and even then, though we are playing what I would consider a large amount of cantrips, I don't think this is going to be exactly where we should be, because cantrips, I've mentioned this before, YouTube keeps telling me to make shorts, maybe that'll be the short I make, where don't play cantrips in Commander. Unless it's like very specifically good with your Commander, which it is here, don't play cantrips in Commander. Or at least do not focus on cantrips being what we consider cantrips in other formats. Cantrips are powerful because of what percentage of the deck they look through. For example, consider lets you look at basically 2 additional cards if you mill the first one, which is a certain percentage of your deck. But in Commander, it is a much smaller percentage of your deck due to the increased deck size. Likewise, cards like consider when you're digging for something, do rely on the fact you have multiple copies of the card you're digging for, which we actually do here, but even then, it feels too little, to be very, very reasonable. However, all that aside, I do want some more lands. I'd like to go to at least like 36, 37 with MDFC. I think that would be a lot nicer. I will say our MDFC is Glasspool Mimic, and I think we really do not want to be playing this as a land, so I wouldn't mind just going straight up to 37 lands. After which, obviously with artifacts, we could be adding in Dimir Signet, we could be adding in Felwar Stone, and Basalt Monolith, I'm not quite sure why it's here. I don't particularly see the combo, though I'm sure there is one here. You can never quite get away from it. There's always one that I miss, and then I'm told that I miss it, but I do think Basalt Monolith feels a little weird here. Another thing I want to kind of poke at a little bit is the tutors. Now, I do like tutors in decks. I find them to be very, very powerful, but I don't think this is the deck that wants these kind of tutors. And why do I say that? Well, my idea is this. We have two halves of the deck, right? We have the Nazgûl, as in literally the card Nazgûl half, and then we have the Lord of the Nazgûl. It's a little confusing. We the Magecraft half, where we just want to cast instants and sorceries, right? These two halves are kind of at odds with each other, if not for the fact they both love Wraiths. So we do have a tying, a uniformity between them. However, one of the things is that Nazgûl, we really want to tutor them, and Lord of the Nazgûl, we don't really want to tutor. We want quantity over quality, whereas Nazgûl is quality over quantity, which isn't even true because quantity is very, very powerful in Nazgûl. With all that in mind, cards like, let's see them. So Demonic Tutor, I think, is the one I would keep, but cards like Grim Tutor, Ring Sight, they're just a little too much mana, right? They are 3 mana to tutor a card, and then immediately we have to hope to cast it. If it's a Nazgûl, that's a 6 mana turn, which I think is too much. And if it's just like for Lord of the Nazgûl, for our Magecraft, we're grabbing like, what, Brainstorm, Consider, those kind of cards, Pongify, just to keep going, and that's a pretty bad tutor. So with that in mind, I'm a little less impressed with those cards. Likewise, Extenuate, though I do have some cards to go along with it, kind of strikes me as not as powerful. We're not really playing a big mana deck. We're low on lands. We are playing Cabal Coffers and Urborg, so we can do it, but I feel like, I mean, if this was Torment of Hailfire, maybe I'd like it a bit more, but it feels a little clunky here. Once again, this is a Kindred deck, this is a Magecraft deck, and Extenuate is a card that just demands so much of our time, mana, and energy, so it feels a little out of place here. Looking at a few others, another one, Time Warp, is kind of interesting. I was with Justin when he played this deck, and he did cast a Time Warp, and it did nothing. That was just because he was behind, but I think it is notable that this card is particularly bad in this deck. Time Warp tends to be really good in decks that, I mean, I'm going to say just need an extra turn to win, but isn't that all decks? I guess Time Warp, I feel it's really good in decks with a lot of mana rocks, a lot of mana dorks, and a lot of like, early game setup into like several just really big turns. However, this deck works kind of the opposite. It has a lot of mid-game setup, with Lord of the Nazgûl coming up halfway through the game, with the Nazgûl coming in halfway of the game. So it's just a little weaker because the turns we're using this spell are turns we need to be building up our board. I'm not saying to take it out because it is a very strong card, but I will note that it is a little clunky, and I think there could be better options. I don't quite know what those options are, to be honest, but I know there's probably better. Let's see. A few others, Chart of Course, Strategic Planning. These are probably just cards that have that text I'm thinking of Justin saying, I don't play Commander. These are just kind of okay. We don't really care for our graveyard that much for strategic planning. Chart of Course is the same. We don't really want to discard. We can kind of do better. I haven't put them here. I'll just say them for now, but like cards like Read the Bones, Rowan's Grim Search, Sign in Blood will probably just be better and generally just generically good, whereas a lot of your other draw is either very, very small or dependent on something else. Birthday Escape makes me angry, but what can we do? It is one of those cards that I'm just like, oh, this is like the worst cantrip you can ever have, because in this deck, the Ring Tempting You is very, very easy to do, so you are just playing one blue, draw a card, which I think is not ideal, But I mean, in this deck, what do you have to work with? You might as well take it. Let's see, instants. I feel these are pretty good. Once again, there's a few cards here, like Soothing of Smeagol, also Sam's Desperate Rescue. There's a few there's Lord of the Rings cards that I just don't think are very, very strong. I'll try to suggest some other options for them. They're definitely being played for flavor, so I won't pick on them too much, but notably so, I don't think they're where you want to be. Looking at our creatures, we have, for the flavor, Orcish Bowmaster is an incredibly busted card in Commander, so I do particularly like that here. But we've got a few others of generally like the Nazgûl, some Changelings. I think Orvar is just not good here. I think he's just a little too clunky to do, actually I should say what they do. I get it, but like, I don't think we reasonably have a lot of targeting spells that don't get rid of the creature, so we can't really take advantage of that second text ourselves. Is that? Yeah, it's when you cast. So I just don't see this being particularly good outside of the Changeling text, so I think this is an easy cut. Sauron is good, Ring Wraiths is fine, Troll of Khazad-dûm is fine. Solemn Simulacrum is very much, and this is something I talk about a lot, but straight to you, Justin, this is not a good card in Commander most of the time anymore. It is good when you have synergies with it, and you do not have synergies with it, and therefore it is a very, very easy cut. I think that's generally it. Enchantments look very nice. Call of the Ring, I think I'd rather that just be Phyrexian Arena. This is just a little clunky. Actually, no, because you're getting a lot of triggers. No, this is fine. Never mind. I forgot. I mixed up the way this works. I thought, yeah, this is perfect. Yeah, play that for sure. All right, let's go into additions. I've got a handful here. I think I'm going to start with just a very, very nice, hey, why aren't you playing these cards? Witch King of Angmar is another Wraith. It's another Witch King. Are you only allowed one Witch King? You're a liar. Play all of them. I do like this as a defensive creature, but honestly, it is here as a flying Wraith, which is very, very notable for the Nazgûl creature. Not so much for your commander, but its ability to grow incredibly fast and have pseudo-indestructible. Pretty nice. Stronger is Witch King Bringer of Ruin, one I really, really like, which is very cleanly same stats. It's very clear that 5/3 is the Witch King, unless I believe this is the Witch King, which is then a 4/3, so the rules are made up. But a nice aggressive one that does some sacrificing. Once again, we're playing this as a flying Wraith. It is flavorful, it is fun. Otherwise, if this doesn't match, I would just toss it. I didn't realize that the Nazgûl, what are the name of the beasts? I forget, but I didn't realize they were supposed to be this undead, or at least the artist has decided. That's pretty scary, I will say. So let's look at some non-Nazgûl or Wraith creatures. Lies, this is definitely a Wraith. It's Roaming Throne. Now this card is a little expensive for what I like, but I think it's insanely powerful in Nazgûl decks. So it's 4 mana, comes in as a Wraith, and then whenever one of your Wraiths has a triggered ability, it triggers twice. This is kind of a busted card in the deck because it both triggers off of the Magecraft on your commander, making twice as many Wraiths, but very, very notably, it triggers your Nazgûls twice. Just very strong. So every time you become the Ring Bearer, I think you're just going to be very, very happy. Growing your entire board, +2/+2 per Nazgûl is just going to be insane. Unfortunately, it is money, but it is just very, very good. Another card here is Archmage Emeritus, who is just, I think, a nice kind of addition to card draw here. Very simply, whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery, draw a card. I think you're going to be happy with this. Very, very simple, very, very fun. Just throw this out. It works with your commander, works with half of your deck. You're going to be happy. And notably, this card is really, really good to clone, which then transfers us to the next part where I want you to clone some more. Phantasmal Image and Spark Double both come to mind. Phantasmal Image, of course, is just a 2 mana Wraith. Unfortunately, it does have the illusion text on it, but you're pretty fine with that because it's rare to target creatures in Commander without trying to destroy them, so most likely the Wraith would have just been destroyed anyways. Very, very good as a Nazgûl copy, which is cheaper than a Nazgûl, really big fan of that. But Spark Double, of course, is even better because it can come in as a copy of Lord of Nazgûl without being a legendary creature, and therefore all of a sudden, once again, you are generating double the amounts of your Wraiths. Now, notable, that also, yeah, this trigger of making them 9/9 doesn't get better if it happens more than one, so I guess it's just generating more 9/9s at that point. It is notable that this, of course, works really well with the Nazgûl themselves as another copy, but as I mentioned in Marchesa of the Black Rose Nazgûl, which is still to this day, I think, my favorite Nazgûl deck. Spark Double is almost wasted in a Nazgûl only deck because one of the benefits that it comes with is the +1/+1 counter, which is already the easiest thing that the Nazgûl can do. So other clone effects sometimes at 4 mana are sometimes better. However, even with that in mind, I think it is notable of just being a very, very strong card. Then I have a few non-creature spells or cards that are half non-creature, half not. The first one here is High Tide. High Tide is notably, you're playing Dark Ritual. I think you can get away with High Tide as well, because when I look at your instant collection, they are mainly now outside of counter spells, which you can't just play, but a lot of the cantrips are just blue. You have a lot of cards that are just really powerful, just coming out in blue that I think are worth playing. And so High Tide turns a pretty good turn into a great turn where you can make many, many copies of, or many triggers of Magecraft, which I think is pretty strong. I will note that this is a card that is not as good when you're behind, but I don't think in this deck that's too much of a problem. And if, like I said, to keep a Tutor in, this is a pretty good Tutor target on certain turns. And then if you have something like High Tide, something like, where are you? The Archmage, together you're going to have just a very, very strong turn of just, even if you have 1 or 2 cantrips to chain through, all of a sudden you're kind of filled back your hand and you have a lot to do with a lot of mana. Another instant or sorcery that I find interesting in this deck as a card draw, and I would put this over the 3 mana Tutor any day, I think that's Grim Tutor, is Pact of the Serpent. Choose a creature type, target player draws X and loses X, where X is the number of creatures they control of the chosen type. This is universally going to be targeting yourself with Wraith. I think 3 mana in black, draw 6 or 7 is going to be very, very good. It's not very strong when you're behind. It's pretty good in neutral because I think in neutral you can usually get three draws over this. But when you're past neutral or ahead, it is a very, very strong card. And I think the opportunity cost is low enough that even though it's, it's good, it's best when you're ahead and good in neutral, I think it's still very, very strong. And as we sometimes talk about win more, I wouldn't categorize this as win more because it doesn't need your commander out to be good. It just gets better with your commander out. But really, it needs you to be doing your game plan. So to me, that's a neutral and a head card, which is fine. Now, I have a card that I would like as your finisher, and that's Rite of Replication. Now, this is a high mana cost card, so there is kind of functionality to it, so it is a 9 mana card for it to be a finisher, but otherwise is fine at 4 mana to just create another Nazgûl. However, if you can hit that 9 mana, and you can do that with, using things like High Tide, Dark Ritual, or just biding your time, getting 5 additional copies of Nazgûl is a tremendous boost to your board and most likely going to make your attack lethal, if not set up a lethal attack the turn after. And obviously this is just generally a very, very good card. And as noted, this also doesn't require you to target a creature you control. You can always make a copy of your opponent's creatures if you're in a jam. So very, very strong card. I think this is a card that has lost a lot of, affection over the years from players. I just don't see it around, and I would like to suggest people to consider playing this again, that it is a card that is good in so many points of the game, especially because you can target your opponent's creature, and that's something I think that's just worth doing and considering when you are in blue and you're somewhat attuned to, let's say, instants and sorceries. All right, and then finally I have 2 adventure spells that are interesting to me. Both of them are not things I would immediately put in, but they are interesting. So the first one is Promise of Aclazotus. Goodness, I will not be able to pronounce that. This card is notable as being the only black populate card, and I'm not sure if it's it looks like the only black or blue populate card. So this is notable because we can populate our 3/3s, but this is also notable that we can populate token copies a la Rite of Replication or other cards of Nazgûl and things like that. Now, is that the strongest thing you can do in this current build of the deck? I would say no. However, I will note that in certain builds of the deck, this could be very, very strong. Namely ones that use cards like Quasi-Duplicate or I believe there's like a flashback one from Innistrad that also makes a token copy. If you were using tokens as your copy, I think this gets a lot better. I think notably because what you can do is have a token copy. If you can get a Nazgûl and a token copy of a Nazgûl amongst everything else, sacrificing the original Nazgûl and populating the token puts you ahead, as long as, like, because you get an extra trigger and the rest of them grow. And then from that point on, being able to reanimate that original Nazgûl or just have other creatures to sacrifice to this can be very, very good. Once again, there is some adjustment in the deck to make this good, but it does really catch my eye as something we do not particularly see often in these colors, and I think that means there's something that we can use here. Finally, the last one here is Virtue of Knowledge. Virtue of Knowledge, I think, is interesting. It's still pretty cheap. Something I'll repeat myself as I feel I do a lot. I don't really like doubling effects outside of the first one. I think the first one is often very good, and after that, it's kind of excessive. But Virtue of Knowledge is really nice because it's 2 different versions of a doubling effect. Vantress Visions is really nice as copying an activated or triggered ability, which you have many of at 2 mana. It also notably triggers your commander, which is kind of cool. But Virtue of Knowledge, the enchantment itself, is obviously very, very good as a enabler for the Nazgûl themselves, like the Nazgûl card, because all of a sudden you're doubling all your ETBs, and that is a very, very dramatically powerful card. As each Nazgûl puts 2 counters at this point on all of the Wraiths, and you are getting into a ridiculously powerful board fast. So I do like this. I like that early game. You can kind of use this as a you can use this, I think, very notably. So if you have early game, or mid game when you have Lord of Nazgûl out, and you cast, let's say, Birthday... No, let's not use Birthday Wish because I think that's the one I don't want to use. Let's use Preordain, right? So we cast Preordain, and then... oh, this doesn't actually... Interesting. I thought this would... Sorry, this is my mistake. I thought this would allow us to tempt the ring. So let me change my example. So early game, you have Nazgûl out, and then it ETBs and you're about to be tempted. You can then copy that tempt trigger and get extra +1/+1 counters onto your Nazgûl, an extra temptation, and if your commander is out, an extra 3/3 Wraith. And I think that's fine. Maybe it's a little worse than I liked, but there's probably other activated abilities that are still worth playing, or copying, but I will say mainly it is for Virtue of Knowledge. And I think that's it. That's generally the changes I would make at this point. I think the deck itself is in a very, very good place. These videos are very short. I'm very proud of myself today. I think the deck is just kind of in a good place. There's a few changes here and there that I've suggested, and I would suggest definitely going up in mana rocks and up in lands, but the deck itself is pretty functional. I think it's playing a lot of very generically strong cards. It has a really fun kind of combination of creatures here, and a very kind of straightforward plan. I think one of the things that it might have a bit of a harder time with, but it is prepared for, is opponents that just want to hate you out of the game, because if they can pressure your Nazgûl and Lord of the Nazgûl just out, the deck doesn't really do much. Now, that's not really a great argument. You might say, well, Curse, most decks, if you push their commander out and their creatures out, don't have much to do. But this is notable because there's really nothing else to do. However, once again, because of the power of having access to like Rhystic Study, to Orcish Bowmasters, and to Mystic Remora, you know, we've got pieces to kind of keep us in the game in the early game and like just to bring some strength to the deck as we build out our fun deck. I think this is a great Nazgûl deck. As said before, I think Marchesa of the Black Rose is my favorite, but this is like the flavorful one, and I think this is pretty good. The only one that then is probably worth looking at after this would be the other, hit my mic there, is the red-black version, which the Witch King Sky Scourge, which to me is just so much mana, but still interesting in a direction to go with Wraiths. But I would even say, because we're going either blue-black or red-black, Marchesa will still cover both of those with Grixis. Yeah, and I think that's it. I think if we looked at another draft of this, there might be a few cards. The thing is, the next drafts of these cards that... Oh, hold on. Okay, good. It's Shrine of Forsaken Gods. I didn't look... What is that other version of this card? I always forget what it is. The one that doesn't tap unless you have 5 lands. I don't think people play those anymore, but I get scared sometimes that I'm like, people are playing that. Going back to my thought, if we are looking at another draft of this deck, most likely, and this is a conversation I have with Justin, is whether or not we want to keep the Lord of the Rings theme in. Knowing him, we do, but that would be the next thought that I have. I know there's a lot of fun in flavor decks. It is a big part of the game and what you're doing, but for people who are, you know, maybe less inclined for that, you can still play Lord of the Nazgûl and not make a themed deck. You can make a very, very strong and successful deck by just using Lord of the Rings cards here and there without having to devote your entire deck to them. That's just my opinion. I'm very much a fan of these Wraith decks nonetheless, and I think the deck itself is pretty strong. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you would like to support the channel and bring your video up to one of the 2 donation decks I do every week, there's a link there too. Finally, if you can like, comment, and subscribe. I said succeed, but I do wish for all of you to succeed, so do that as well. You can do that as well. My goodness, I love ending videos. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you for setting this deck. I know Commander is not really your jam, and I'm very, very glad that you let me bully you into it. And honestly, this is a pretty fun deck, so I think you've done a pretty good job. Good luck building the deck, and I look forward to the next time I get to face up against it.